Like what if the European Union didn't exist? Well, I had a dream a couple of years ago, in fact a nightmare. And those from school number 5 remember me sharing it a couple of years ago. The year was 2019, Moscow, meeting of Presidents Trump, Putin and Le Pen. Britain had just left the European Union and Scotland has declared its independence. Turkey deal, thanks to President Erdogan's anger, collapsed. Also due to the Syrian conflict, which escalated, the migrant flows increased to the EU in a couple of millions. Germany was forced to close the borders, as did Austria, France, and other countries. Schengen zone collapsed. Sovereign debt crisis spread from Greece to Italy, Portugal, and other southern member states of the EU, thus pushing the Eurozone to actually come to end of its existence. Donald Trump, President of the United States, is patient, but not a very patient man. He was waiting for member states of NATO to pay their dues and spend 2% for their defense. Only few have done. So he has frozen the contribution to the NATO budget. NATO as the organization started to lose its clout and importance. Russia, seeing the opportunity, moved in, created 3 new frozen conflicts in Europe, in Visaginas, Ventspils, and Narva, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. NATO failed to react, as there was no agreement between Paris, Berlin, and Washington on common action. Incited by the independence by Scotland and Catalonia, Miroslav Dodik, a certain president of Republika Srpska in Bosnia and Herzegovina, declared his own independence and was immediately supported by Vladimir Putin, not only politically, but also financially. That, in many ways, started a new war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where, in many ways, so many other conflicts have started their way. Remember Sarajevo in 1914. This conflict very quickly spread to Kosovo and Serbia, which left behind their talks and started again resuming the confrontation. In the Balkans, neither the EU nor NATO had any agreement to intervene, and the conflict spread further. Meanwhile, in Asia, President Trump is engaged in big confrontation with China on trade, on South China Sea, on artificial islands, on so many other issues that divide the two. There's one fat boy next door in North Korea who uses the opportunity and fires a missile to South Korea. In this way, dragging both United States and China into a major conflict. A major war escalates in the Koreas to the extent that is difficult even to imagine. The countries and the member states of the EU close their borders, look inside of themselves, start sharing mistrust towards each other, and the global trade rules collapse in the World Trade Organization. Paris climate deals fails, as both China and the United States fail to reach their commitments. The world descends into the space of chaos, uncertainty, anarchy, economic warfare, and military confrontation. Well, you would say, horrible nightmare. What a dream. But it's only a dream, right? It never comes true. But who could have imagined 3 years ago that today we would be saying goodbye to one of the most precious members of this club, United Kingdom, that we are about to start negotiations with on Brexit talks? Who would have said 3 years ago that 1 million people will cross the sea from Turkey to Greece, risking their lives and fleeing one of the worst conflicts our world has seen in Syria, which until today was 475,000 lives, and will try to seek shelter in Europe, the biggest migration crisis we've ever seen since World War II? That was not seen and expected 3 years ago. And who could have thought 3 years ago that one of our closest partners, indeed at that time strategic partner and one of the most important trading partners, Russia, being the permanent holder of the seat at the Security Council, mandated together with others to safeguard international peace, to safeguard international law, to make sure United Nations Charter is implemented to its letter, that same country violating two fundamental United Nations Charter rules, that of sovereignty and territorial integrity, and invading a sovereign country. Who could have seen that coming? And finally, who could have seen that coming 3 years ago? The very thought that our closest partner, the friend by all means with whom we share all of our common values and common interests, United States, will start doubting whether European security is in their interest, whether European Union and its cohesion is in their interest. Something which has defined the post-World War order is today no longer certain and is being questioned. We're back to square one, where we have again to in many ways convince our American partners, or in fact one partner in America, that Europe matters, that European security is a part of American security, that European future is a part of American future, that only together we can still, in many ways, retain the initiative in the world, whether that would be on global trade or climate change, or fight against terrorism. Alone, we will not be able to achieve anything. We have to again convince our partners of that. So, the dreams have to be treated carefully. Sometimes they come true. But in order for them not to come true, you cannot just sit down, relax, and lie in the bed. You have to do the action. Think about for a minute, what if the European Union did not exist? You would have borders between the countries. You would have visas and controls coming back. The 9 million people who have profited from Erasmus scholarship, and many of you probably will profit as well, would not have been able to exchange the education, the culture, the language, and meet so many friends across Europe. If European Union would not exist, you would not have the biggest single trading bloc in the world, the biggest single market, which is the main trading partner for even 80 countries in the world, including Russia, China, and the United States. If European Union did not exist, you would not have the biggest development aid provider in the world, which every year spends 89 billion euros for aiding countries in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia, elsewhere. 89 billion as compared to 31 billion spent by the United States. EU is a major soft power in terms of development, humanitarian aid, and peacekeeping. If the European Union did not exist, the structural funds and cohesion funds would not aid the most far away and unprivileged regions, the peripheral and the regions with high unemployment and big economic difficulties. Just like the Baltic states, which in many ways, throughout the last 13 years, every year has received a fifth of its budget from EU structural funds and cohesion funds. If the EU did not exist, perhaps some of your schools would not be. The internet would not have reached many of the villages in Lithuania and would not have made Lithuania one of the most connected countries in the world. If the EU did not exist, you wouldn't have the roads that you ride today on, and the quality of the food and the water and the health, which was one of the highest in the world, the gold standard in many ways in the world. If the EU would not exist, who would have taken the lead in Paris on the climate change talks and shown the way to the world? And if the EU did not exist, who would take care of Kosovo and Serbia talks today and make sure that the conflict does not come back to the Balkans? If the EU did not exist, who would maintain peace through EU4 in Bosnia and Herzegovina? If the EU did not exist, who would provide macrofinancial assistance to Ukraine, to Georgia, to Moldova, and in many ways help those countries to reform themselves in every single day while fighting corruption, while fighting oligarchic structures, while fighting in many ways the enemies of the past, the post-Soviet mentality and legacy? Who would take such a leadership in trying to make sure that those countries transform themselves and become European modern societies? Think for a minute, if the EU did not exist, what we would do, alone and in a single way. Paul Henry Spaak, one of the founders of the European Union, once said, "There are no big countries in Europe. There are only those who still did not understood it. We are all small. Small is beautiful, as Irish say. It's true. However, In order to make any meaningful contribution to the world policy, we need to be together. Because only together we can actually make a difference. Today, European Union accounts for 25% of global trade and 20% of global population. If the demographic trends persist, in 15, 20 years, we will account only for 10% of global trade and 8% of global population. Think about it. This is EU together. Think about Lithuania alone. I'm not sure how many zeros you'll have to put below the comma in order to compare ourselves to the growing markets in Asia, Latin America, and Africa. It is quite clear that we have to be together. Of course, I don't want to say there is no alternative. There is always an alternative, absolutely. But the alternative is much worse. And also, the alternative can be actually something that we have left behind our backs. The alternative is only 24 kilometers from Vilnius if you drive east and you reach Belarus, the Eurasian Union, where neither human rights, nor human dignity, nor rule of law are respected, where people are fearing for their future, where people are fearing for their liberty. You don't know if you will end up in prison while walking out in the morning from your door. You saw massive crackdown in Belarus just a few weeks ago. You saw massive arrests in Russia just a few weeks ago when the protests were raging in all cities in that country. This is something which I think every Lithuanian in his or her body understands. Thanks God we left that behind. We're no longer worried that we will end up in prison, that our children will not have an education, that our children will not have health. We can even criticize the president of the country or whoever is. We can create an internet television and make it even more powerful than the national broadcaster. The one Facebook post in Lithuania can bring down a minister. Think about the power of social media, of youth, of this free society. That would not be possible if we were not in a free European community together with other nations. So what is necessary indeed is, as I said, try to safeguard this very precious gift, which was given to us by Robert Schuman and Jean Monnet 60 years ago. When what they did is they united two war instruments, coal and steel, to provide for peace, to provide for cooperation, to provide for free market and free movement. That was a visionary thing to do. The negative and the very powerful war instruments put together for the purpose of peace. So today we also have to make use of our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses. Would it be Brexit? Would it be our divisions on migration? Would it be our insecurity in terms of terrorist attacks and cyber threats? This is a weakness, but we can turn it into a strength in many ways, which could be the new mobilizing force for the EU to survive. It needs to reestablish its purpose. It needs to understand that it's not a bureaucratic project, but it's a project of peace, a project of cooperation, a project of, in many ways, exchange. We have to rediscover our leadership. It is now at the moment on the way of renewal in France and Germany. In the Netherlands, we already had a very positive result for Europe, a very positive yes for European project, and we're waiting with big anxiety the results in France and Germany in the next few months. Other than leadership, we want to and we need to strengthen our foundations, strengthen our immunity, especially vis-à-vis the threats like Putin's Russia in the east or Islamic State in the south, or indeed the radical forces inside of the EU. You need to be more immune. You need to be more resilient to cyber threats, to information warfare, to post-truth reality, to alternative facts. You have to be more critically minded. You have to be more smart in order to really understand what is true and what is not. And we need, in many ways, to regain our self-confidence. Europeans are extremely nice people, very often very humble people, which is a nice quality. But sometimes we're too humble. Sometimes we need to understand that we have reasons to be happy and very much proud of Europe and proud of the European project. So many people in the world do not have this opportunity, neither to travel freely, nor to feel as normal citizens of the world, but also they don't have even access to water. They don't have access to safe food. Forget about access to education and health system. So this is something which we have and we take it for granted, but we need to make sure to safeguard it in order not to lose it. And here, the self-confidence of our American friends can come in handy. And probably we should not forget one of the sayings which in many ways define the American nation, which I always found very inspiring when I was studying and living there, and that is that united we stand and divided we fall. So let us stand united and let us not even entertain the idea, what if the European Union did not exist? Thank you.